Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
Hi, welcome to the show today. We have a very special guest, my husband, Casey Hoffman. He is going to talk to us about sustainable ranching. He has a ranch management degree from TCU. He grew up on a farm, but I'm going to let him tell you all about that. Anyway, here he is.
Hello. Thank you for having me on the show. So I was born and raised on a small farm and ranch in West Texas, which is relatively small for the area, and worked on the farm. We raised wheat, cotton. We had about 300 head of ewes, and I have two brothers, so we were constantly on tractors and helping my dad with everything that is either harvesting, planting, cultivating cotton, drenching sheep, or making sure that everything has water, especially in the brutal and harsh summers that are out in West Texas. So graduated from high school and went to college kind of part-time, and I worked on the farm and day worked for different farmers and ranchers around the area. And then I decided to go to TCU Ranch Management to kind of round out the, I guess you could say, the classroom aspects of it, of production agriculture, and really learn how the finance part and the marketing and all that stuff comes together. Because what happens, especially if you're raised in that production agriculture like I was, from the time I was running around in my underwear, sitting on the tractor with my dad, you don't tend to get the full picture of everything. So TCU Ranch Management is a wonderful school. I highly recommend that anybody that has had experience or an interest in getting into a serious interest in getting into the production agriculture to attend that school. It is not theoretical, it's applied. So,
right, you went through like 9 months of hardcore on the job, doing plans, seeing ranches, traveling with a bunch of dudes in like Suburbans.
We had females too.
Oh, yeah, females too. Sorry. We don't want to leave them out.
Not necessarily on the job, but to kind of explain, the TCU Ranch Management is geared for production and agriculture with a focus in beef cattle production, which makes up a lot of what the farming and ranching community is. So it's hard to just say, well, I'm just a farmer, I'm just a rancher, because there's usually a mix of both.
Well, they should be, right?
Exactly, because they go hand in hand if you're going to raise your own feedstuffs or your own hay or some of their own grain.
It's better for the environment. It's better for the soil to rotate.
Yes.
Right?
So, yes, and what I was going to say is the TCU Ranch Management Program does a wonderful job of explaining the breakdown of what it is, which is it's managing a resource, taking records, learning from your mistakes, what are your limitations, and putting that all together. And one of my professors used to say that his objective for all of us kids, and there's only probably, they'll take 30 kids, but they'll have anywhere from 20 to 30 kids in that class. And it's one classroom, one building. You don't go all over the campus. It's a very focused,
right.
TCU Ranch Management. But anyway, he said the objective was to be able to, theoretically, if you're in a plane, just drop you anywhere in the world and you could figure out what your abundant resources were and all of the resources available, what your limitations are, and be able to be successfully driven to make a farm,
right.
a ranch, and live off of it and prosper.
So for some people, or most people that are not that don't have experience, have not gone to college, and want to buy land, even if it's just 5, 10, 15 acres, 20 acres, whatever, and be just self-sustainable, what is your advice to them, or how do they get started, or the do's and don'ts, just kind of those things?
Well, very good question. And I think that's part of the show is misunderstood. So one of the things that at TCU, the layout of how you get to that point, to start, it's actually kind of counterintuitive. You figure out where you want to end. So you work your way, what do you want to do? So you make your ending goal. Like, what is your goal? What do you want to be? You want to be 100% sustainable? Do you want to be off grid? Do you want to have no connection to the outside world? Are you going to have tractors? Are you going to what are you going to do for pest control? What are you going to do for plowing your field? So I think there's many different levels of subsistence farming. So work backwards. What is your goal? If you want to live off the grid and do primitive farming, which is going to be very difficult, you have to understand what that means as far as a labor aspect of what goes into it. I mean, is it just you and your wife, or you and a small band of people that want to go out and do this? Because if you're going to do primitive farming, you're going to be working,
Right. Well, a lot of people are, I say a lot of people, but we're seeing a lot of people in real estate trying to do this and starting to homeschool their kids and having multi-generational we're kind of going back to the old days, right? Of how people used to live.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and,
we're reverting.
Right. Because we realized that was a lot of ways a healthier way of life, and, not the rat race. And so, you and I obviously would be doing that if circumstances were different.
Right.
But I didn't grow up like that. I grew up in the country, but I didn't grow up farming. I had families that had farms that we visited on holidays, but I don't know, I fed the chickens and threw the hay, and it was a lot of work, just a little bit of time that I was there. And for the people out there that aren't afraid of work, that's fine. But I think the biggest issue is misunderstandings, things that they see on the internet, Pinterest, or how people are doing it wrong, how they're doing it industrial, type of farming, where they're, not understanding that you can't overtill the soil, you can't overwork the soil, it depletes it of the nutrients. What is or how would they go about gaining knowledge on how to do it the right way so that they can continue without failing? You're going to fail. Obviously, that's how you learn, but you don't want to fail to the point where you can't do it anymore or you give up.
Yeah.
So can they hire somebody like you to help them in the beginning?
There's plenty of resources online. White Oaks Pastures is one of them out in Georgia. They do a lot of that.
What's his name?
Will Harris.
Will Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he has a pretty good management plan. There is actually,
because he has all kinds. He's sustainable, but he also is for profit. So he has chickens and cows and pigs and all the animals, rabbits, meat rabbits, everything. He also has organic fruit and vegetables. He also has like bees and honey and all that stuff. So he's really doing it in a much larger form. Obviously, he has over 100 employees, but he's sustainable. So if you could take his plan and just shrink it.
Yeah, so he's sustainable in the aspect of sustainable for the resource. Sustainable farming, if you look up the definition, that is, just farming for yourself and your household and not producing anything in surplus. So that type of sustainable farming is what I think would be, depending on what you want to do, the best way to do it. Yes, he manages all of his soil residues to where there's plenty of organic matter to feed the soil profile.
How do you do that?
Well, you don't conventional till is going to be one.
What does that mean?
Conventional till means that you plow at least, I don't know, it depends on the crop. So I'm going to stay kind of general. Conventional till would be plowing before you plant, plowing after you harvest, and maybe in between harvest and planting. So you would keep the weeds down by plowing them up. Or if you're trying to plow prior to planting, you're trying to make the soil finer so that you have more soil to seed contact, so that you can have a better stand.
But it depletes it over time.
Well, what it does is it kills, there's microbes in the soil that help break down all of the litter, which is the residues from a crop. So those microbes break down all of that organic matter and actually feed the soil.
It's like leaves in the forest. The leaves in the forest break down and feed the trees. And when you rake all the leaves away, it actually harms the trees.
Yes.
You should leave your leaves around your trees or mulch.
It's an ecosystem. I mean, you go back 200 years whenever this was the tall grass prairie, and it was a perfect ecosystem of the buffalo coming down here in the wintertime and grazing on dormant grass and then going back up into the mountains during the summer.
So how do you replenish that? You rotate it with animals?
Yes, you can do that. You do it gradually. So you can't just go from a conventional industrial commercial farming to, the sustainable farming for the resource is what I'm going to call it. But you have to move in phases. So you'd have to go like minimal till. So there are new implements, and farming honestly has been moving towards more of that and managing those residues. But it takes, I think White Pastures claims that, and I'm probably going to butcher this, but it was 15 to 20 years to evolve into what they are today. So erosion control is something that, sustainably farming helps mitigate a lot of, because they
also don't use chemicals, which also harms the soil and all the organic matter in the soil, and the microbes and everything kills them. So you don't have that natural soil that's going to regenerate itself because they're using chemicals, and then it kills everything.
Right.
So if somebody who wants to do organic, how do they, because they are doing that, or, I know you've done that. You've grown humongous gardens, especially with okra, because okra is crazy. But I've never seen so much okra in my life.
Right.
But, just the smallest thing of just taking, some chicken poop and you make your tea, which the kids are like, what? Tea, gross. But it's because it has a lot of nitrates in it. It replenishes the soil and it helps the plants grow. And so you could grow a watermelon in where most people would never think to do something like that or not know about it. So so that's probably my question is, do they bring in poop from other animals and put it back in the soil, right? It's like a fertilizer.
So how some of that works, if you are in a farm that is currently doing it the industrial way and you wanted to move towards that, like I said, it would take several years of doing it, but you get fertilizer spreaders for manure. So you can just fertilize, the land, and we're talking hundreds of acres, not 5.
How do you collect all of the manure?
You can do it with a shovel and a lot of people. If you're talking about cow poop in a pasture, you have obstructions like trees, canopy cover, it makes it difficult. So that's where I was talking about earlier, is the labor force that is behind, sustainable farming like that is immense. So,
there's so many people out there that need jobs.
We used to do is have a large family and everybody would work the farm. So, and
even neighbors would help each other. And you also had immigrants come in that needed jobs that,
absolutely,
could live on the property and help on the property, and they have a roof over their head and food on the table that they wouldn't otherwise have, but we've gotten away from that.
And to just back up a little bit, the reason that we started industrial farming was to feed people. So the 30s was very, very, very hard on everybody in America. A lot of people went hungry.
Right. People died. A lot of people died.
A lot of people died.
From hunger.
So you have advancements, and after World War II, and you have a lot of biologists developing a lot of things, Agent Orange and stuff like that. So you have a lot of chemists doing a lot of work in that field, that they said, hey, you see a lot of insects die, and they, were pretty creative in trying to feed a country that is desperately trying to get their feet back underneath them and try to produce a lot with very little. So
Right.
that is where we were then. We didn't know that we were, whether we did or we didn't, that'd probably be a whole nother show. But whether we did or didn't know, but we were trying to produce as much as we can with as little
Right.
as possible. So, yes, moving back, now that we know what we know now about the health benefits from, GMOs or non-GMOs and genetically modifying even wheat seed. Before we genetically modified wheat seed, a wheat kernel was probably, 20% the size that it is today.
And what are the health consequences of doing things like that?
To us, or are you talking about this?
The
around?
environment, to us, the animals that we feed them?
I think there's a lot of that to be to debate. I think there's a lot of harm, and I think there's a lot that is undiscovered, because I think we have people that are rushing out there trying to take it all away real fast. But you can't. You got to do it slowly. So you can't go out to the farmers and say, you've got to stop doing it this way and you need to start doing it this way. We would go hungry if we did that. Because what happens whenever you don't use chemicals is that you might lose a whole crop. The whole county.
So how do they?
The whole county might lose their crop. So if you have something like a Haitian fly or a beet armyworm come through,
Or locusts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what the chemicals did was actually make it to where they could bring stuff to market. So they could be successful enough to bring something to market. Now, do we need to dial it back? Absolutely. Can it be done overnight? Absolutely not. So
somebody that wants to grow their own,
mm-hmm.
how do they keep that from happening? That loss. What do you do? Are there things out there naturally that you can keep the bugs away? Everybody wants to use vinegar for everything. Can you put vinegar on your plants?
Well, right.
Because vinegar kills plants. You don't want to do that, people.
There's a lot of things that our forefathers did that we don't practice anymore. So there's a lot to that.
What about the Native Americans? Grew all kinds of stuff naturally.
Absolutely. I'm not versed in what they did back then, and I'm not an entomologist, but there are some biological benefits in researching that and figuring out what is the best way to mitigate a total crop loss. So like I was saying earlier, White Oaks Pastures is, I believe there is a group or an association that has sessions, courses, workshops that goes to what we're speaking about today.
And they can find those online.
Yeah, just look up White Oaks Pastures, and it'll tell you their affiliations with.
And where are they located?
They're somewhere in Georgia,
right?
I believe.
But they have locations everywhere, or just stuff, or like online courses, or you have to go to Georgia?
No, I'm not sure. I think it is a small thing that's kind of catching on. I know Rogan had him on.
He was on Fox, and then then he was on Rogan, and then they just blew up.
Yeah, so I think that stuff is catching on, and I think people are starting to realize that people are opening their eyes and being more aware to the ways of the world and how and why we are here and what we need to do to better ourselves.
Well, cancer is up 70% since all this started.
Yes.
The chemicals and processed food and
we've demonized
what we're doing to our animals before we eat them.
Right.
Everything that they eat, or we also ingest. So if they have pesticides, we have pesticides. If they have antibiotics, we have antibiotics. And if they have steroids, we have steroids.
Right.
And that's something else is people want to go back to the old ways. People miss that lifestyle, I think. Even if they haven't ever lived it in their lifetime, I think there's something genetic in us that makes us want to kind of go be a part of nature when we get
Absolutely.
out in nature,
It's primal. Yeah.
So everybody wants to be the American cowboy. I should have been a cowboy. And, God bless Toby Keith. And so, they want to go back to that lifestyle and they want to be a cowboy, but, they don't have, back in the old days, they learned it by growing up in it like you did, but not everybody has that capability. How do they learn to be a cowboy again? How are they going to learn how to take care of cows? Because cows are really difficult to take care of, and people don't understand that. Like, they just think, I'm going to buy some cows and throw them on some land, and, I want to support that. I want people to be sustainable. I want people to have freedom. We don't want Bill Gates coming in and buying all the land up and the government buying everything up and then having complete control over our food source. That's
Absolutely.
a terrible, horrible idea. So the only way we can prevent that is by being sustainable and maybe even being able to make a little money at, the farmer's market or whatever for the people who can't do it, right? So how do they go about learning how to be a cowboy? Like, is there some kind of camp they can go to learn how to, like a summer camp, when we were kids, we go to learn how to ride a horse and we go learn how to do this and that.
Yeah.
Dick was talking about he went to these camps growing up. His brother also went to
Right.
TCU ranch management,
Right.
which I just learned today. He was like, wow. So, but how do they learn? You're talking about these courses through White Oak or whatever, but what if they don't have access to that here? How do they learn? You can go online and YouTube anything, but is it correct? Is it going to be the right way to do it? Especially if you're in East Texas, it's very different on how you farm than West Texas. Completely different how you farm and what you can farm.
Right.
And so, how do they learn that? They go to ranch management school?
No, not necessarily, but I am going to go back to those roots, and that if you're somebody that doesn't have all those resources just right around the corner, I would go to your county ag extension agent and ask him who is farming, the most innovative, or who is changing their...
Where would they find that person? Through the chamber? Through the city?
County courthouse. You can
The county
ask them.
courthouse,
Just go to the
city
county
hall.
website. Yeah, that's a common...
Which is where we
job.
record the city of Conroe City Hall.
Right, yeah. So just get in touch with your county agent, and he can kind of get you in touch with some of the people or some of the farms that are farming more progressive like this and going back to the old ways. And I truly believe that learning through the school of hard knocks would rival anything my parents or anybody else taught me. So
But some people
I
can't
would
afford
say-
to do the school of hard knocks, right? Because it's very expensive. You buy a
Well,
bunch of
that's-
cows and they don't make it.
That's where I'm going with this. So you find those people that are farming like that, and you go knock on their door. And you take your hat off, and you ask them, do you mind if I help you and volunteer yourself? Serve.
Which
We're
we should
supposed to be doing that anyway. So
We just learned
just
about
serve.
that.
Just hang around. Come over once a week, and hey, if they're going to be loading hay for the next week, come over there and throw some hay bales.
Right.
Or if you have a tractor and they need, and swap. And that's how it used to work. Is, you swap with each other. You help me this week.
That's what your
I
family
help you.
does.
Yeah, exactly.
All your
And-
neighbors, they all help each other.
And you will see organically and inadvertently, you will be talking about hows and whys. And you will see it. You'll live it. And by default, you'll be able to figure it out. Depending on the scale of what you're doing. Now, if you're going to go buy 10 acres, you don't want to go down the street to somebody that has, 3,000 acres of,
We have friends that actually do some of that, which is like Jeff Morris and
Right,
his wife
exactly.
Candace is real into like being sustainable, and they're
Right.
learning how to do a lot of stuff. And you were getting chicken poop from her, and
Yeah.
we were, hey, can we get some chicken poop? She's like, yes, please.
So they would be a great resource.
Yeah.
Anybody that you can reach out to.
And she knows
go
a lot
to
of people.
Go to farmers markets.
Yes, I
Go
was gonna
there
say
and
that.
talk to
Yeah,
the owners of people that are selling this produce.
That's right.
I mean, they're doing it at a scale because they have a surplus.
That's
so
right.
you're
And they're
gonna
obviously successful enough that they're able to sell it at market.
You're going to figure out, they're going to tell you how they combat, a hornworm on tomato plants, or how they're taking care of the earworms in corn and stuff like that. So, I mean, I think there's some technologies that we can use that are still the industrial way, but there's some that are too harsh that we need to kind of
A kinder
extract.
technology.
Yeah, we need to optimize that, because I feel like, I think the jury's still out on all the impacts of what all these chemicals are doing to you. Because
they know they're causing cancer.
I sprayed Roundup from the time I was 15 years old with the cab doors open because I didn't have any air conditioning in the tractor. And when I turned around on the turn row, that spray would hit me in the face.
Right.
I'm like, oh, it's.
But your body can heal from it if you take
can't
yourself
all do it the
away
same.
from it. But if you do it your whole life,
Right.
which worries me about like your brother and people that work in that industry, the average life for a farmer is not a lot. It's not high. It's like 45.
Well, the average age of a farmer is 58.
Is it 58? Okay.
Yes.
So that's not very old. And they die mostly from on-the-job accidents. It's like one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. So people need to put that into perspective.
Yeah,
if you want to own a farm, it's very dangerous. And you're out on a farm by yourself. Like that movie we were watching was Sissy Spacek. She gets caught under the tractor and like her arm, her arm got caught?
Yep. I've seen some train wrecks. It is dangerous.
It's
Especially
very
when
dangerous.
you're talking about mechanical machinery.
Yeah.
I've seen my brother get taken in by a PTO shaft before. So I've
That
gotten
just
my
scares
hand.
me.
We were loading sheep one day and I had to pull the blocker out so that my brother could kick the door shut because it was a sliding door and it was an old rusty thing. So last minute, the sheep jumps out or pops his back leg out of the back of the trailer and I shoved the sheep in and my brother was kicking the door at the same time and my hand just barely got out. I mean, it skinned the back of my hand, but there's a ton of small, relatively fast, quick and easy things that happen to you that you're like, man, I shouldn't have been there. I mean, my brother was using a high left jack and broke his hand. He was working on it. He was trying to flip it. So, yeah, there's a lot of potential hazards in raising crops and
you see a lot of farmers without fingers.
And I haven't even talked
you
about
notice
animal.
that they're always missing like the nub of their fingers or.
I have an uncle that's losing half of his index on his right hand rather. There's I didn't even brought up animals, horses or cows. I mean, there's a lot of train wrecks that happen when people, what I don't want to see people do, and it's so sad, is if they are not educated enough prior to going out and buying some land, going out and buying 5 head of mother cows that are already bred up, and you round them up and thinking that they've YouTubed it and they know how to do it all, and then they get them into the pens and they're trying to get them into the chute and stuff, and one of them turns around or there's some old decrepit pens, which they are abundant in Texas, say, oh, I got pens, but never actually used them, never even been exposed
or haven't
to a set of pens.
maintained them or checked on for safety purposes.
Yeah, they're dilapidated in that manner. So they think, well, I got it. And then just, that's why I say the best way to learn is to go just say to your neighbor and just humbly ask, hey, I'm trying to get into this and I'm willing to work. And you better show up willing to work and willing to sacrifice a lunch or something because you might work all day and you might not come home until midnight.
And dinner. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're harvesting wheat or something and they're combining, I mean, you might not be in until 1 or 2 in the morning. It just depends. I mean,
your brother works all night when they do hay. Yeah, because they have to do it at nighttime.
Well, they have to do it whenever the moisture is at the optimum. So,
especially in West Texas.
Yes, absolutely. So Mother Nature dictates a lot of what you do as far as your calendar of operations and how you are able to harvest what you've been growing.
We need to take a break.
Sure.
But I want to talk more about the animals. You just brought up all the animals after we get back.
Okay.
Car enthusiasts of Conroe, FM 104.5 and 106.1 Lone Star Community Radio invites you to shift into gear every Monday from 1 to 2 with Cruising Car Club Talk with Robert and Randy for news on all things automotive in the greater Houston-Conroe area. Can't make a live show? We've got you covered. You can find all of our uncut content, including full episodes on Spotify, iTunes, Play Store, YouTube, Facebook, and irlonestar.com. Again, that's Mondays 1 to 2, Cruising Car Club Talk with Robert and Randy. See you there.
All right, we're going to talk a little bit about farm animals and animals you can have on a small farm. sustainable animals that are easier, or how to manage them, possibly, or how to take care of them. What is your advice on cows, horses, pigs, the common chickens,
Right. So,
the do's and don'ts?
So what kind of diet do you want to have? And what do you want to consume at your table? And so obviously beef production is probably the largest quantity of protein that you can produce per unit, which would be per cow. Eggs, milk.
And how do you feed a cow? What does it take to feed a cow and keep it healthy
What does it take to feed a cow and keep it healthy?
so that you can eat it later?
Well, you need water and grass, and when you don't have grass, you need hay. And your grass needs to have a nutritious content, meaning that it just can't be.
Like they can't eat Bermuda grass?
That depends. Yeah, they can eat Bermuda grass. They can eat all kinds of different grasses, but in high rainfall areas where sometimes the soil content is depleted, they need more. I mean, it depends on where you are in the world. If we're right here in Houston, or East Texas, where you have plentiful rainfall, I mean, you can move cows from West Texas over here and they would fill their bellies up, and in 3 days they'd be starving, but their bellies would be like this. It's because of the nutrition content in that. So being aware of your feedstuffs and what you provide, you are going to have to supplement a little bit if you're going to do something like that. But basic common needs for any livestock is going to be water. Is going to be first and foremost. They need more water than they need food.
Right, we all do.
So water, and then whatever your feed stuff is. So cattle are mainly grass grazers. Sheep are primarily forbs grazers, and then goats are primarily browsers.
What are forbs?
Forbs are going to be like your weeds, your common weeds. They prefer that. It doesn't mean they won't eat grass. It doesn't mean they won't eat browse, which browse are like your brush, and stuff like that. So common misconception is that you can't graze cattle and sheep or cattle and goats together, and that's wrong. They actually complement each other, because if you have goats that come in to a heavily wooded area or that has a lot of browse in it, lots of vines, the goat will go in there and daylight everything, where it'll have more light shining down on the ground where the grass
Like in
grow.
forests where it's clear at the bottom of the trees, you can see through them. It's probably because they put goats through there.
Right. So it's kind of a biological.
And then the grass
way.
can grow.
Right. So
And then you can put the cows through there.
Correct. So they do complement each other. So.
And then if you have weeds, then you've got
Sheep.
Sheep eating weeds.
You don't have to have all three. Like I said, it depends on what you want to eat at your table. I mean, some people like goat, some people like sheep.
But it's kind of a good balance,
most people like beef.
right?
Yeah, I mean, I would.
You don't have to eat the goats.
No, you don't have to. You can sell them.
Just have a few and let them
use them for
grazing.
Yeah, just for
keeping the overgrown.
Yeah, for overgrowth. So they will. It takes nothing short of a brick wall to keep a goat onto your property, but that poses its own challenges.
Yes, so he's a farmer, a third-generation farmer, and they've had all the animals. Pigs, not a great experience.
No.
They're not good animals to have. They're hard to take care of, right?
Somewhat.
Why? Why did your dad, why was he not successful with?
Well, it wasn't that he wasn't successful in raising, it was the price. So you have risks in any type of crop animal. You have a market risk. So I think it was towards the late 80s that the market went down for pigs, and he chose not to, just because it was pretty labor intensive. You got to feed them, and you're trying to finish them out, and there just wasn't a huge market in Texas for.
Are they hard to
pigs.
take care of?
No, not really. They'll eat anything. You just got to provide it. But back to what does it take? It's not just feed and water. You got to have fences. You got to be able to responsibly contain your livestock wherever it may be, and you need the facility in order to process them. Meaning, do you want to put an ear tag in their ear so that if your calf got out on your neighbor's place. How are you
So
going
you
to
do your
identify
tag
that?
instead of branding them?
Or you can do, a lot of people do both. You want to be able to make sure that you
So
can
people can't
identify
steal them?
especially in the springtime when everybody's calving. They've got black cows, I've got black cows, whose is whose, you know what I mean? So you need to be able to have adequate facilities in order to house whatever. I mean, if you've got chickens, you're going to have an enclosure because there's coyotes, there's coons, skunks, everything.
Yeah, it needs to have a lid, a side, and a bottom.
Yes, all four sides. And
So your brother has chickens, and they have is it like an old railroad car? Is that what it is? What was it?
It's an old cotton trailer.
Cotton trailer.
Back before we did modules, they used to haul all of our cotton to the cotton gin it's a big basket. It's a flatbed that has expanded metal on it, or just wire, just a wire that goes up, and they're probably, I don't know, 10 foot tall, 10, 12 foot tall.
It's kind of a perfect setup because it's off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't have to worry about as much about critters.
Yeah,
Is that
so he
correct?
converted an old cotton trailer to a chicken coop.
And
or
it's
a
completely
chicken
enclosed.
house.
So coyotes can't get them. The only thing
Yeah.
that killed them recently was it last summer? A bunch died from the heat.
Right.
It got too hot. It was like 120 degrees or something.
Yeah.
But, I mean, you have to have them enclosed.
Right.
Because snakes get them, their eggs, the babies.
Yeah, keeping them off the ground's a good thing.
Even sometimes don't they get like mites or something? Can they get mites or some kind of...
Yeah, they can get some mites, and they'll drop a lot of feathers.
Does that affect the meat or the product?
Not really, not that I know of. I'm no expert in poultry, but I wouldn't say. I mean, if she lays an egg every day, or if she's still producing, or if you're gonna eventually butcher the chicken and eat it later, I don't necessarily think that the external feathers have the impact on that.
Is there a difference between a meat chicken, like a chicken you eat, and a egg producing chicken?
Well, like I said, I'm not an expert in poultry, but yes, there are certain chickens that are good for, they call them layers, or they call the ones that you harvest and eat a broiler. So yeah, there's a difference between the two.
Okay.
What I was going to say about, having a facility to, work your cows or your sheep or your goats or anything like that. Another thing is just being aware of, and this is actually going to be a tough one, because animal husbandry is one thing. It's all of the things that it takes to take care of and raise an animal, or multiple animals at that, which is, you got to have your head on the swivel all the time. So gaining that experience is probably harder than anything you would do with a farm, because it's not like you can go to your neighbor and say, hey, what do you do? I mean, that's kind of a verbal, unless you're there. When he walks out there to the barnyard and he's got 5 calves that he just castrated and they're all dead, he's not going to call you up and say, hey, come over. I've got a situation for you to learn from. He's probably going to be a little bit mad, emotional, pissed off, but it's probably harder to learn the animal health side is what I'm getting at. There's a lot of information out there, and it's something called the Merck Manual, which is a big thick green book that you can buy that'll give you a lot of the basis on animal health. County Extension Agent, once again, they have a lot of information and resources that they can get you in touch with as far as any of the networks or the people involved in your area, and especially for the conditions that you're posed with and the resources it takes for you to raise any of the desired animals. So, it's just not giving. So if we're going to talk about, raising an animal, not using, any antibiotics or growth hormones or anything like that, that's really a tough one. How would you feel about walking out to your chicken house and almost every chicken you have has coccidiosis, which is a very bad digestive,
And it's common.
And it's highly contagious. So, and most of the time people put their chickens up at night and they're all over each other. So it's not like you can go in there and just sort every one of them. They're all drinking out of the same water. So it's really tough to not be able to give them antibiotics because you're married to this program that is no antibiotics. and then you have to just, dispose of them or slaughter them all if you can eat them.
Is there a balance?
Yes, I think there's a balance. I think there's something you can do if you can go through there and sort out all the ones that are healthy in quarantine, the ones that are healthy from the ones that are sick.
Is there a balance between giving them antibiotics and not? Can you give them some antibiotics but not too much antibiotics? Do you think that we give them too much?
Yeah, probably overprescribed. Yeah. But
Kind of
that's
like
all
humans are overprescribed on antibiotics,
Yeah.
and it creates superbugs, and then people don't have an immunity to things.
We're not challenged enough because we kill them before they actually
Right.
let herd immunity
Now,
take effect.
I know you're not a health expert, but everybody's like, no antibiotics in our chickens. Do you know of any real documentation saying that putting antibiotics in your animals is affecting humans in a negative way? Do we know that?
I think there's a lot of...
Because you're kind of a health
information.
guy, so I just
Yeah,
asked.
I think, when it comes to antibiotics, and the age-old adage is you are what you eat, okay?
Right.
So there's something called, what USDA has come up with is what's called a withdrawal period. If you vaccinate this animal, they'll have a withdrawal period. Some of them are 20 days, some of them are 30 days, some are 45, some of them are 90 days. Depending on whatever drug you gave them, that's a withdrawal period. So you're not supposed to slaughter or consume them within that time period. So the withdrawal period means that antigen or that pathology has run its course, and it has either absorbed it or it's no longer resides in that animal. Do we have a cellular understanding of our bodies and what residues are in each cell of that animal? I don't think so. And even if it was, would it be hurting us? We take antibiotics. What is a microdose of antibiotics going to do to a 4-ounce steak or an 8-ounce
But
steak?
we don't take them all the time.
No.
Like my 16-year-old who got sick this summer on the way to the day we left for vacation, was sick the whole time we were on vacation. I gave him antibiotics for the first time in his life. He's 16 years old, and he had a horrible allergic reaction, which I'm allergic to antibiotics. So, maybe it's hereditary, but he'd never had antibiotics in his whole 16 years of life because he'd never needed them.
Correct.
And he really didn't need them then. I just gave them to him because we were going on vacation and we were camping out in the woods, and I wanted to be on the safe side and try to get him better faster. Now I regret it because then he had a bad reaction.
Well, you live and you learn, but I think, it's hard to blanket statement a lot of stuff. And
So-
it's hard for anybody to answer the question of, what can you do for everybody?
So we don't really know where COVID came from. There's all these conspiracies and things, but how do we know that the mass quantities of antibiotics that we're injecting our animals and also in ourselves hasn't created these superbugs? Which they've been talking about the superbugs for 20 years. I've been hearing about it, that this was going to happen.
Right. SARS.
And these people that can't fight off these diseases, where I never took antibiotics growing up hardly because my parents just didn't take us to the doctor. Like, you just go rub some dirt in it. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I was very country. I was like a hillbilly, as George would say on our episode, the first episode. So, how do we know? We don't, but we have to still eat, and we still have to provide food, like you said, for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a balance. But if you have your own farm, I guess it's just you deciding whether you want to take that risk or not. Right?
That's right.
And educating yourself on, like you just said, don't give them antibiotics and then eat them 2 days later.
Right. Yeah.
Make sure you understand that you can't eat them for 45 days.
Yep.
I think that is obviously important. I think by then maybe the antibiotics have worn off, I would assume. I don't really know how antibiotics work.
No, I'm not a chemist either.
I'm not a chemist. I'm not a pharmacist. I'm not any of those things.
Yeah, I'm not a human biologist. Yeah, I don't know.
Or animal biologist.
Yeah.
But, we don't have much time left, but I would really like for you to talk about instances where you ran a ranch. For 4 years, you ran the Rio Roca Ranch up in, I guess, North Texas.
Yeah,
just outside of
Palo Pinto County, about an hour west of Fort Worth.
right? Which is North Texas. It's like straight north from the center of Texas. So what are your experiences out there when you were out, working the ranch and running cattle and horses? Because she wasn't doing it for production. She was some, but she was also kind of just wanted to do her own thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, we were a commercial operation, though. We were doing it
For cattle.
Yes.
But not plants.
No, we weren't doing any farming. I was planting probably 450 acres of wheat so that I could graze some of the calves that I weaned off of my cows. I would hold them over and graze them on wheat so that they'd have something green to eat during the wintertime. But I mean, it was a farm and ranch. So, what are some of those experiences?
So what did you learn? Yeah. And then maybe some of your school of hard knocks, like what did you learn not to do that you didn't learn in ranch management school?
Well, one instance is really hard lesson to learn is I castrated some bulls one time, and I lost 3 of them.
Why?
I think I cut them too high. I cut them with a knife, and I think I cut them too high, and they bled out.
Just from lack of experience, because you hadn't done it often?
Well, I'd done a lot of lambs, and I've seen a lot of testicles removed, but there's 2 parts to that. I think I might have cut them a little bit high on their scrotum, and then 2, there's something called signs. So the Farmer's Almanac has signs for where the blood is sitting in your body. It's I think it's either lunar or solar. So most of your blood in that animal would be in the foot or in the stomach or in the heart or in the and the sign. I didn't check the signs before I did.
So
it.
the moon cycle controls where the blood is in the animal.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I didn't I've never even heard that. You've never told me that.
That's some old school witch doctor stuff. But I tell you what.
It's legit, though.
I remember very, very
so it makes you think
clearly that my dad would ask my mother to go in there and check the signs before we called it marking our lambs, but it was what we were doing was castrating our lambs.
Why do you castrate them?
You castrate a male because you're growing it for meat. So instead of that animal fulfilling its reproductive organs and testicles and testosterone and all that, you stop that at an early age, and that animal will use what would be those resources to grow itself in meat instead of reproductive organs.
So it's basically creating like a super athletic animal instead of an animal that wants to reproduce.
Well, you take away their desires too. They're not going to waste a bunch of energy chasing a bunch of females around.
So they get fatter and bigger?
Yeah. So you kind of reshape do it with horses too. They're a different animal.
Do you think it makes the animal unhappy? For all those PETA people out there?
Well, yeah, I think it's not very pleasant whenever you do castrate them, but I think after their quality of life after the fact. I don't think they know the difference.
It hurts at the time, but
yeah, I don't. Personally, in my opinion, I don't think they know the difference. I mean, they're simple-minded animals.
They have very small brains.
Yeah, I mean, they're not sophisticated. They don't have. They don't reproduce or they don't have sex for pleasure. So,
but pigs do.
Pigs do?
Mm-hmm. I read that somewhere.
I wonder where you read that.
The internet.
You read
the World Wide Web.
Gosh,
must be true.
Put that
it's
in
probably
stone.
On Facebook.
Put it in stone. Put it in the books. So.
And that's the problem is people like me. I see something, I read something, I think it's true, and then I put that in my brain as that's true, and it may not be true.
Right.
And that happens a lot.
Well, so
I have friends that have horses, and they think I'm going to go buy this horse, and I can go train it myself and have my own arena. We're not going to name names, but one of my friends almost got killed. She has a little camera set up when she was training her horse, and you know who I'm talking about, and she almost got kicked in the head. No helmet on, nothing. And it's kind of, it's dangerous. You can't go buy a cowboy hat and 50 acres and call yourself a cowboy.
Those actually aren't cowboy hats. Those are grass raising cat hats, because if you didn't have grass, you wouldn't have a cow. So to kind of sum up the sustainable farming thing is you really want to know, you need to define what you want. What is your goal? Do you want to just raise food for your household and not produce anything in surplus? Which, I mean, that would be kind of a primitive deal. Like, you're not going to have tractors or what? I think the most economical way for people that are tired of the rat race of the city and corporate jobs and corporate America, take what you can as far as your capital resources and go buy you a place, but educate yourself. Maybe go on field trips and ask one of these bigger ranches, hey, whenever you do your spring workings and you're out here branding cattle and stuff, can we come watch? Can we do anything? Can we help you round up? Can we just be your grunt?
You think
And
they
you
can
will
find
learn.
people like that at the rodeo? Like these little tiny rodeos that are all around here all the time.
Maybe.
Do you feel like people like that
I
might
think
hang out in
these
those
old
areas?
coffee shops that are in these little podunk towns is probably the best.
Like
Go
Old
to a
Montgomery
li-
Steakhouse?
Go to an auction barn where they
Yeah.
sell livestock. I mean, RFD TV, that's a good, I haven't watched it in years. but-
RFD TV?
Yeah, it's a farm and ranch network that broadcasts a lot of, that's a wealth of information just to even just stick your toe in the water.
And you can still watch that on TV?
I believe so. I think it used to be on DirecTV, but like I said, I haven't watched it in a long time. Yeah, RFD TV, old coffee shops, sale barns,
Sale barns.
stock shows and rodeos. I wouldn't say so much the rodeo as
But
I
the
would
stock show,
the
that's what
stock
I mean,
show.
yeah.
Yes, go to
Okay.
the stock show, and you know who's approachable. I mean,
Just follow your gut.
The stock show and rodeo thing is kind of a glorified thing, so they're not really economically. They are economically driven, some of them, but they're not sustainable farmers and ranchers.
A lot of
For
it's
the
4-H. It's
most-
4-H stuff.
Yes, I mean,
Like kids
not
going
that
through
there's
4-H.
not people that are legitimate and everything and doing that and
Right.
just have humble beginnings and stuff, but
But what about like an ag teacher?
that's a kind of a glorified.
Just like your high school ag
Yeah.
teacher.
Yeah, they're a lot like, or dependent now. I haven't been out of school for almost 25 years now, 24 years. But
Man.
old ag teachers are kind of like your county extension agent. So your 4-H is usually under your county extension agent, so they will be your representative. So are we out of time?
We're out of time.
Put another penny in the jukebox so we can get. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I really enjoyed having you on today, and I hope everybody else did too. And
Yeah.
Casey is a great resource for information. He also has other degrees and experience and all kinds of other stuff. He's very
Jack of all trades, master of none.
Well, he's pretty well versed in the ranch world, the farming world, considering his history with his family and actually going through the program and actually running a ranch, even though he hasn't done it in a while. But yeah, he's just a book of knowledge, and he can tell you where to find information possibly. If you want to reach out to him, if you have questions, you can email him. His email is cattlemen1981@yahoo.com. It's cattlemen, not man.
M-E-N.
Yeah, M-E-N. So cattlemen1981@yahoo.com. You can also reach out to us at themissunderstoodshow@gmail.com. And you can always reach out to Lone Star Community Radio. All the information is on their website. On our YouTube page, we have all kinds of Facebook pages and Instagram pages and iHeartRadio, or not iHeartRadio, iTunes, Spotify, all the things. Find us. Stay tuned. Give us your feedback. If you have questions, I would love to hear them. We could have Casey back on anytime because I'm married to him. And so he's a good person to have around. But thank you. Oh, I have a joke. Which farm animal keeps the best time?
Which?
A-
Rooster.
A watchdog.
Oh. Bravo.
Boom. All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.